to the God is a Geek podcast. My name's Adam Cook, and as always, I'm joined by Callum Ahern.
Hello there, Adam Cook.
But Callum, I'm not even going to ask you how you are because I don't care, and we have a guest.
That's fine. I'm used to it at this stage. Who's our guest, Adam?
Well, it's Patrick Ewing, and I hope I've pronounced his surname right because I didn't ask before we started recording. Is that right?
That's correct.
Damn. Oh, so Patrick, who are you? What do you do?
I am a developer at Campo Santo, which is a small studio in the United States, in San Francisco. And,
are you sure?
I don't know where I am right now. I kind of thought I was in the room with you two, but it's strangely lonely here. I don't know. And we are working on our first title as a group. Everyone has worked at a bunch of other studios you've probably heard of before this, but we're all working on Firewatch together.
Firewatch. I wonder if anyone's heard of that game at the moment. I would hope so. You guys, you've kind of got on your hands one of the hottest games going at the moment, don't you think?
We hope so. Yeah, it does seem like we've gotten a lot of hype, a lot of buzz, but everyone there also seems to be a good deal of mystery around it, possibly by design.
I think there's a lot of mystery actually, and we're not. I should say people who are tuning in to sort of go, oh, they're going to unravel what this game is. Mm-hmm. Well, kind of, sort of not, because we don't want to spoil it, and I'm certain you don't want to spoil it. Maybe Colin wants to spoil it. I don't know.
I don't really, to be honest, because I'm quite looking forward to Firewatch. Like, as Patrick, you said, an awful lot of the Campo Santo crew have worked on. Like, it's kind of a who's who in terms of like where you've worked. Like, there's people from like Clay, Telltale, what's Double Fine,
EA, or there's a lot of. I think that is that covers a lot of it.
Yeah,
Clay, Double Fine.
If we kind of, what about your own history, Patrick?
So I'm the oddball. This is my first game that I've worked on properly. Before this I was an early employee at Twitter. Started from 2009 to 2015. Yeah. So I was always like a game obsessive, I suppose you could say, and was every year at GDC. And I knew Sean and Jake basically via a shared obsession with Monkey Island. So when they were working on that game, we became friends. And basically, as soon as I heard that they were thinking about starting their own studio, I said, I will quit my job. I will, find a place to put me, find a use for me for a programmer on this game, and I will be there.
I'm guessing that's what you were doing at Twitter as well, was it? Were you a programmer there?
I was a programmer, yeah.
That must have been fascinating. So were you at Twitter from the inception?
Not from the very inception. I was there. Twitter started as a side project of a podcast company, actually, in 2006.
Really?
2006. Yeah, yeah. They were making a product called Odeo, which was going to be the first like podcast directory and place where anyone could easily host podcasts. And then about a month before they were going to publicly launch, Apple announced the iTunes store. iTunes podcast store. Yeah. So they're kind of like, ooh, I don't know about this. And then Twitter was the project of kind of like an Amnesia Fortnite Hack Week sort of thing. So that was when Twitter first started in 2006. And then I joined in 2009 when it was still fewer than 100 employees at that time. So it feels like it was very early days when I started, but it wasn't the very beginning.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. I'm just in shock because I've known Colin a very long time, and that's the first time I've ever heard genuine surprise in his voice.
I find it fascinating because obviously we live in this age of social media and whatnot, and to find someone who's like kind of from or who was at Twitter from more or less its inception, but okay, yeah, not exactly inception, but from its early days. It's just fascinating.
Oh, yeah, it was an interesting ride.
So was your main like whatever about Firewatch? Let's get into the nitty gritty of Twitter here.
No, because I really want to talk about Firewatch. I mean,
we're not allowed, Adam. We can't talk about Firewatch.
We can talk about Firewatch because I'm trying to think when I first became aware of it, and I don't want to do a disservice to what the game is more than just this. But the first thing that does, I think it's safe to say most people will say this. First thing that strikes you is the art style. I think it really draws the eye in, and then from that moment, you want to know what this game is. Do you think is that disrespectful to the team? I don't know. Is it? I hope not.
No, I mean it's the first thing that hits you. We've got a number of great designers on the team, but starting with when people heard that Ollie Moss's name was attached to it, that his whole fan base I think got sort of activated. Not all of whom are gamers, and then when we first started showcasing our art on the website, etc., I think. Because we've said very little and shown quite a bit. So yeah, I think that's been a big like magnet drawing people to the project.
So how does it go from, because I'm trying to get my words out and actually failing here. That's unusual as well.
Is it though? Anyway, go on, Adam.
I'm trying to work out what's his involvement in terms, he's the art creation, is he?
Ollie? Yeah, so he does the concept art.
So how does that go from, because presumably there has to be some marriage between story and art. The two have to marry somewhere in the middle. There has to be a point where you go, that really feels like it works for what we're trying to do here. And again, we're not going to go into story too much, but how does it go from that sort of creative process of someone over here is writing a story, someone here is saying this is what the game's going to actually be mechanically, and this is what it's going to look like? Because Ollie's not over there with you, is he?
He is periodically.
Right,
he certainly visits, but yeah, most of the time he's in the UK, and we share a lot of screens back and forth through Slack. The team is like heavily based in Slack, and it usually starts with a discussion like, okay, we need a burned area of forest, for example, and source materials are shown. Jake, our co-founder, he often like kicks off by sharing some images from, it could be a guidebook from the wildlife of Wyoming, or our United States Forest Service, or we actually took a trip to Wyoming and took a lot of source photography. So it might be an image like that, and then Ollie, is amazingly quick at firing up his Wacom tablet and giving you something representative in terms of the color and the feeling and the way the light falls and the kind of the general layout. And then, folks can comment on that, and it sort of goes back and forth until a concept is reached. This is my impression from the outside. As a programmer, I don't directly have as much input on this. And then once that concept is reached, then it goes to Jane, our 3D artist, and Jake and Nels, who do level design. So Jane might say, okay, it looks like your concept here has a lot of these burned trees. So I'm going to go into Maya and create a bunch of representative burned trees. And she does great Twitch streams, I should say. If you ever want to look up the Campo Santo Twitch and see Jane doing live designing is really, really cool to watch. And then Ollie will go in ZBrush and paint over Jane's models. And then they kind of do a back and forth sometimes where, they're both sort of adding to something and throwing it across the wire to each other, which is really cool to watch. And then once you have those set of objects, then Jane and Jake can make a scene out of these kind of component parts and assemble them in new ways.
It sounds difficult and very
above our pay grade.
Yeah. I mean, there were programs and processes you mentioned there that I vaguely understood. I'm not going to lie, but that I'm not a game designer. I just write about them, unfortunately. It's a weird one with Firewatch because you mentioned that you've shown no. What did you say? You'd shown very little. No, you've shown a lot and told very little. Or was it the other way around?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think we've done a number of trailers and playthroughs at this point. We've done live demos at GDC and PSX, and we've shown the game a lot, but we've said very little.
Go on, sorry, Colin.
I was just going to say, didn't Bungie advertise Firewatch once as well, unintentionally?
I don't know. What are you referring to?
Yeah, I've not heard this myself. Where are you going with this?
Was it? Maybe we should just leave. Maybe we'll just kind of leave it there.
No, I don't think you can leave it because I can't tell if Patrick's genuinely baffled as I am.
I see. It just came to me there. But didn't Bungie tweet out an image that they tried to pass off as Halo?
This is vaguely. I'm remembering this now. Yes. Bungie. So I think they did end up apologizing to this, but Bungie tweeted out some sort of Halo contest and then one of their fans stole Firewatch art. Right. And they ended up retweeting it out, and we were like, huh? You know, like, WTF, guys, like, that's not Halo, that's Firewatch.
Oh dear.
Slightly different games.
So they didn't win, obviously.
Right. That is one funny thing that keeps happening is Firewatch's key art keeps popping up like all over the internet. Like we should have a separate channel for it at this point, especially that kind of like iconic image of the forest with all these layers of trees and mountains, kind of like with all these gradients of color. We've seen that for like, you know, trance music shows and it beats stuff. Like, we've seen it like for games like that, like weird giveaways. For some reason, people just love stealing that key art and reappropriating it. No idea why.
It's a, you know, it's really dismissive to say this, but the feeling when you think about AAA games that, you know, or first party games is that there's a distinct kind of lack of, not perhaps imagination, but a lack of color. Mm-hmm. And that piece of art you know, with, you're talking about the one with like the birds flying away. Yep. Yeah, I mean there's something incredibly striking about that I think if you know that's from a game, it's kind of similar to The Witness that's just come out, that you see that and you think, I just want to know more about this, because as much as there's nothing wrong with a shooter that's brown and grey, you do eventually see something like that. And it's even now, like in 2016, even now something that colourful really stands out to me. I don't know if it's just me or you know, if everyone feels the same.
No, I think it is fair, because for many, many years we were kind of, it was just browns and greys were kind of the predominant colours. And again, to reiterate what you're saying, Adam, sometimes that's great, and sometimes you just want to shoot a load of aliens in the face. But then sometimes sometimes you want a more story rich narrative kind of driven game. And like Patrick is like, yeah, we won't get into specifics and whatnot, but it is fair to say Firewatch is very much a story driven narrative type of game.
Yes,
but there are. Again, if I go too far, just stop me. But there are elements of puzzles in there, isn't there? Or am I wrong? I remember there being something to do with, you had a rope, or
there's you certainly have to think about the environment and you have to notice things. I would certainly say that. Like, it's not like The Witness where you're suddenly going to come across like a lock and there's a light maze or something and you need to solve it.
Right.
But what I do think you'll find is, like a lot of games with a large interconnected map, you will, as you progress through the game, notice, I can't quite get to that area. I can see it on my map, I can see it down there, but I don't have, like you said, a rope, or this trail is blocked off. And so through kind of in the like Metroid / Castlevania mode, where you see areas you can't get to yet, and then by getting new items.
Don't tell me this. Don't tell me it's like that sort of thing, because I love those kind of games and the combination of that. Seriously.
Yeah, the Metroidvania thing was a huge inspiration for the level design and how more and more of this big map becomes available to you as you progress.
How I don't even know if I want to. I'm going to ask it because I feel like it's something that people listening will think. Just ask it. If you can't, or if you don't, you know, it's really important. People listening that we've said to you. Like full disclosure, of course, you know, if you don't want to answer a question, you don't have to. That no one can make you, and we really genuinely don't want to spoil this game. But the mention there of this large map and the fact that, you know, you may have to come back to somewhere, or there's a path that you have to find another way to get past. Scope wise, again, the concept art makes it look. I mean, you're in a forest. Forests are generally very big. I'm not asking you, is your game 10 hours long? Is your game, because again, I don't want to know. I kind of want to experience that myself. But is there any way we can talk about the scope, the scale of this game without spoiling?
Yeah, I think so. So one interesting bit that we discovered only when we were basically done was that we built a full square kilometer of explorable terrain, and you know, I mean, and that's very densely packed. So the map is like, if you actually treat the human as human scale, we have like a full square kilometer of densely packed like national forest land that really does resemble the landscape and the foliage and the plants and animals that you find in that part of Wyoming. So if you've never gotten to visit Yellowstone, then you're in the UK, for instance, you actually can kind of get a bit of the feeling of this really special part of the world, which is very like just grand and fun. So I would say that like there that doesn't exactly give a key to the amount of playtime, but it does give a key to like how much there is to explore if that's what you enjoy. And we actually we share an office with the folks who make Kingdom of Loathing. I don't know if you are familiar with that game, but they like we've noticed that when they play, they take forever. they like spend so much time just exploring every little nook and cranny, and there are things to find there. So you could absolutely speed run it. But I think you'd be missing out on a lot of what's in there, a lot of the care that was taken in creating this world.
Something I must admit, like it's very difficult in our job to try and go into a game blind because you're in the industry, you see how much here's a trailer, here's some blah blah blah. It's part of the promotional lead up. So but there are games I don't know about Colm, but there are games I personally try to distance myself from because I know that just for once I want to play a game that I saw and I thought that looks special. I want to play that and have that feeling. And this is one of them. But I must admit, I did, because you had an IGN first deal, and I did watch a bit. I think there was like was it 19 minutes or something like 20 minutes of gameplay.
Yep, that's right.
I did watch a little bit of it because the one thing I wasn't sure of is, as much as it looked great and as much as I was interested, I like story-driven games. I wasn't sure what Firewatch was, other than it appeared to be first person, and you were in a forest and the art was great. And there appears to be dialogue happening as you kind of just go around. And I don't know if you've played Oxenfree. It only came out recently, and obviously you have played it. So did you notice? I don't know how far you got through it, but the dialogue, the way the dialogue's handled, is different, I think, and brilliant. Actually, I genuinely think the way the dialogue is handled in that it just feels natural.
Yeah, how would you describe what's brilliant about the dialogue and what's?
I just think it's natural in that you kind of. It does fall apart slightly because when you go back to areas, if you are trying to like pick up collectibles and stuff, which I must admit I didn't do too much of, it's suddenly silent. So there's this clearly that we have put this much dialogue in the game. It's supposed to happen at this moment, but it feels very naturalistic and it feels constant, like you're with someone, like you are chatting with someone. As it's realistic, I suppose, is the word I'm looking for. Right. And I'm intrigued by that because what I've seen of Firewatch, you're not the only person in Firewatch.
Right.
But it is, as you say, it's a big place, and I'm intrigued as to how you, again, tiptoeing around how you keep moment to moment interesting with what you're doing, because it doesn't look to me. Initially, you could look at Firewatch and think it looks like, and I apologise for this, it's not a term I like, but people will say it, is the term walking simulator.
Right.
I really don't like that term because a game's a game, but that's another podcast. But what people seem to deem a walking simulator or not is split up by what actually happens. And I'm intrigued as to how you keep what is Firewatch that keeps you interested, I suppose, throughout without spoiling.
So the dialogue is central to the game, absolutely. Basically there's two main characters in the game. There's Henry, the protagonist and the player character, and Delilah, who is another lookout who lives in another tower. You can often see her tower. She can see you, but you're only linked to each other is through this radio. And in some ways, this sort of inverts the standard adventure game thing where, the player character's wandering around just observing things, but they're kind of talking to themselves, in a kind of weird way. We're like, what? Is this person crazy? Why are they walking around just talking about things? Well, in this game, you are constantly wandering around talking about things, but you're talking about things to a real person. And we've there's just been a huge amount of effort to make the dialogue, as you said, naturalistic, to feel like this is an actual person on the other end who remembers what you say, who constantly calls back to conversations you've had earlier, with whom you can develop in-jokes. Like if you take a certain conversational path on day 1, you might be surprised to find on day 7 that she's actually referencing your joke that you came up with together. Or if you named a fire in the game, that she's remembered the name and now that's become your kind of pet name for the fire. These sorts of things. So I think that it's really the character development of getting to know another real person and getting to know or embodying the persona of Henry that makes the game what it is. In addition to the environment,
You could have mentioned Yellowstone there earlier, and obviously the first thing that comes into my head is Yogi Bear. But the second thing that comes into my head, no, that was Jellystone. But the other thing that comes into my head is what this game is based upon. So the fires of 1988, so Firewatch is set after that,
right? 89,
and
summer of 89.
And is there any reality to the narrative of Firewatch, or is it completely was it just completely written by yourselves?
It's a completely new narrative. It's not based in any specific fact, but they do make reference to, for instance, the fires of 1988, which you mentioned, and the whole setting. Like when you inhabit the Firewatch Tower that Henry lives in, it is very, very close to the reality of an actual Firewatch lookout, down to the size and shape of the construction of the tower, the items you find in it, like even down to like the little United States Forest Service like cookbook that you that you find. So it's a mix of very real elements and then a lot of narrative elements that we had fun with, like the little world building things. Like I won't spoil too much, but like Ollie has created a whole series of like murder mystery novels with each one with like uniquely drawn book hardcover cover art on them, and each one has a blurb written by Sean, the writer. Like basically building out this entire series of books that doesn't exist. Like you'll find it's a real mix of fact and fiction, I guess.
With because you mentioned earlier about how like almost sounds like Telltale, like so and so will remember this like from day 1 to day 7. How do you mean in terms? Because you said like if you go down a conversational path, how does that work in game? Are there literally conversation wheels? Because again, I've tried to stay kind of blind. There are. Okay, yes. That's something I didn't know at all. That's interesting.
Yeah, and actually, Oxenfree was very interesting for me to play because we did. I think we made a couple of the same choices in the way the dialogue system works, which are actually very difficult to support.
Yeah.
But where you can interrupt dialogue at almost any time. You can start a conversation tree about one topic and then midway through jump to another topic. You can always choose to not talk about something, which I think is interesting. Or another one that you see in Oxenfree and in Firewatch is you get multiple opportunities to share a piece of information with the other person. So, if you have let's say you have a complicated backstory and you don't want to talk about it on day one, that's not your last chance to ever talk about it.
Okay.
Yeah. These things are all really, really hard to they just require a lot of work and a lot of writing coverage to support all of these like possible realities, I
mean, that was the one thing about Oxenfree that was, when you sort of look at it from like the critical or the design point of view, I kept looking at it and thinking, God, this must have been a pain in the ass to just actually have this work to be able to have these dialogue options, but then because you've hit the Y or whatever at one point and it's done that, for it to naturally make, because you don't want them, and you can interrupt, of course you can, like you say, but you don't want it to sort of sound stupid, for want of a better phrase. You don't want to just suddenly be like, oh, blah, 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 blah. You want it to some sort of break in the conversation if it's a natural conversation. That sounds like such a pain in the ass to do.
It is. It requires a huge amount of work, and most of that. But it's so important because if you break, if at one point you break that, suddenly the characters sound like robots and not like real people.
They sound like characters in a game.
Yeah,
absolutely. I suppose we're kind of living in a golden age for these very narrative driven first person. Adam, you used the phrase earlier, and I just use it here again. That kind of quote unquote walking simulator, where like your Stanley Parables,
everybody's gone to the Rapture is another one.
Exactly. Yep. I suppose is there anything that when you look at walking simulators again, there's no other phrase for it, I suppose.
Oh, I do actually have another one that has been proposed that I use. JP LeBreton calls them wander games.
From now on, that's what we're using.
Wander games. So when you look at Wander games, or you kind of play other Wander games for reference or whatnot, is there anything that you will gravitate towards in those games more so than your first person shooters, for example, or at the same kind of in the same breath? Is there anything that you find popping up an awful lot in these games that you think kind of needs to be stripped out? Something that just is kind of becoming a common theme in these games that you think doesn't necessarily need to be there?
That's an interesting question. I almost feel like it's the opposite. The one criticism that I hear about some of these Wander games is that there's not enough X in there, that people want more. And so I think that the base idea of you're exploring a map, you're discovering little bits of people's humanity and people's lives and just the world around you through sort of just looking and noticing things. I think that is fundamentally very strong. And you find like you'll do that if the environment is well done, you'll do that in a first person shooter, like after you've cleared the area of enemies, you'll actually like spend some time looking around. I mean, I think that's why a lot of people like, Gone Home, those folks all had worked on the BioShock series. And that was their idea was, okay, let's make a first person shooter minus the shooter and see what story we can tell. Right. Mm-hmm. And then the criticism then I think people have is, okay, I love the environment. I feel like I'm learning something, but I want to do more than just walk.
Yeah, well, I want to shoot some aliens.
Maybe I want to shoot some aliens. And if so, like, luckily there's a lot of games for you.
There's enough of them, isn't there? That's the thing.
Yeah. So then I'm like, what can we add back in? I thought Soma was a great example of a game that added in a lot of story stuff, a lot of different like fear and horror elements.
Have you actually seen, I think it's a PC only thing, but have you seen that someone has released a mod where it removes the enemies?
A mod for which game? For Soma.
Yeah, that's something like that. It removes the enemies, or it removes their ability to. Well, you don't die in it, do you, as such? But you know what I mean.
Yeah, you'll get stalked and then bumped back to.
That's it. Because a lot of people they'll complain. Like, there's always someone to complain, but the complaint was amazing story, amazing world, but really annoying because some of the enemies are difficult when I keep having to go back, and it's.
Right.
Again, it's the opposite of what the other complaint is. Oh, I want something to do. Oh, no, sorry, now I've got too much to do. I want to. But someone's apparently put a mod that you can remove the enemy, so you can just explore that world. And this story is phenomenal, to be fair.
Right.
But it's just bizarre. That is to me really strange, but cool, I suppose. But bizarre.
Yeah, I remember J.P. Le Breton, who is a developer, and he's the one who coined Wander Games. I think he actually maintains a page of mods for, I think he calls it game tourism, where it says, what if you want to explore a game's world without having to kill or be killed by anything? I wonder if he's the one who released the Soma mod, or that seems like. For me, I thought it was with that game it was a perfect balance of okay, I'm exploring, learning the story and learning about the world, and then crap, I need to survive. So I think there's so much room for that, where people are trying new things with this genre. Like, can we make a compelling story but then also have some survival element? Is that possible? Like, that's one question of what could you try to add back in, or could we, could you have a narrative game with a ton of dialogue and a ton of walking around, but there's also a crafting element, or have we found a way that we can pull back in some of the puzzles that we liked about classic adventure games without feeling like we're getting all the crap that came along with that, with like just all the dumb puzzles that adventure games often had that made no sense, and etc. So I think we need to add more than subtract.
It kind of sounds like if you're going to sort of lump games into the genre of Wander Simulator, you've got Everybody's Gone to Rapture, which is way over there, which is, I suppose, I actually loved it. I think I scored that like a 9 out of 10. I really loved that game. I thought it was brilliant. But it's very much, if you really want to I've actually never met anyone who's made the argument that, like, the old, it's not a game argument. I've never actually met a human being who has ever said that, but if you want to make that argument, I suppose there's that game over there that's very much a walking Wander game. Yeah. But it actually sounds like Firewatch has more in it than that. If everyone's gone to Rapture's over there. Firewatch is you can't. Of course, you can see the Sorry because we're all in the same room. So that's over on there where I'm pointing to my left, and Firewatch is more over on the right where there's actually things to do as well as all of the associated things with that game. You've like Colm mentioned the rope and things like that. There's things to do in this game.
Yeah, I think that's true. On the spectrum, the differences are there's more of a feeling of unlocking areas and attaining new abilities. Then the other thing I loved everything. Everyone's Gone to the Rapture as well. The one thing that was missing was you're always sort of a fly on the wall there. Yeah. You're always an observer, and I think that some people want for a narrative game to have some input on the story. So in the fact that Firewatch is you're always one of the participants in the dialogue, that makes it more engaging for me as a player.
Yeah, I suppose Rapture is a case of you're walking through a world that has it's all happened. Exactly.
It's static. Yeah. You can piece things together in your head, but that's most of the interactivity is something you're doing as an observer.
I mean, I genuinely think that game has a payoff well worth seeing. Mm-hmm. But yeah, Firewatch sounds more like you're an active participant in the story.
Yeah. I think that's fair to say.
Sorry, I was just going to say, where did the inspiration for Firewatch actually come from?
You'd have to ask Sean about that. He's the writer. I know that in terms of the setting, both he and Nels, who's a programmer and level designer, grew up in Wyoming. So they know the setting. I think that he's had this idea of having a connection to one single other character over a walkie-talkie radio for a long time. And I think that's sort of been bubbling in the back of his head for a while. And it has a certain... So I think that the story developed from that idea, which is like you are developing a relationship to another character who you don't see necessarily all through dialogue in the setting of a national park. I think that was kind of the germ of the idea. And then the story, which we haven't said much about, but there is one.
Yeah.
Hand to God. There's a story.
I'd love that. There'd be a bait and switch if the game comes out. Oh, no story. It was all a joke. You just
yammer on about random things.
Yeah. That would be great. That would be genuinely great. So what's like, and I don't want to make you answer a question that might be boring to you, but I'm intrigued as to what your sort of day-to-day role is on the game. Like, you're a programmer. So what does that actually mean to, and bear in mind, we're both idiots when it comes to that kind of things. What does that mean for you?
So the main part, there's two things that I do. One is tools development. That has largely taken the form of I built a web application to hold all of our dialogue lines and to give us a whole workflow for writing those lines, grouping the content into a series of conversations, getting the voice recordings all sorted out, and then now translating as well. So we're like working on 5 main translations for the game, at least for getting out as soon as we can around launch time. So that's like the tools part. Then the other part is what we call gameplay programming or wiring, which means I'm not actually in the engine optimizing draw calls for changing how many polygons are drawn at a certain distance, but the wiring piece is the logical side of the game. So you step into this area and then we trigger this dialogue, or 50 seconds after you say or don't say a specific dialogue choice, we should trigger this other dialogue path and set this variable that we can check later. It's that kind of stuff where we turn a flat script into a living game with a bunch of conditionals and logic that carries gameplay forward. So that's kind of my day-to-day. Does that make sense? Is that like a...
Yeah.
Yeah.
It does. I mean, I'm imagining you must be up the wall. Sorry, Colm, go on. You were going to ask a programming question there, I believe.
No, I was just going to say it makes as much sense as it can to two idiots who haven't a fucking clue about programming a game. But in terms of... do you ever find, Patrick, that the programmer is sometimes kind of the unsung hero of games? Like to Adam's point earlier, like when you play a game, like what initially hits you is the art and visuals and graphics and people talking about, oh my God, there's so many polygons, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Like, do you ever find yourself
all the polygons,
all of them, exactly? Do you ever find yourself kind of, I don't know, I suppose just programmers as a whole. Like, do you ever find you're kind of the unsung heroes of games development?
Well, so I should caveat by saying this is my first game that I've worked on, so I can't really compare it to other studios. Yeah. I think that one thing that I love about Campo Santo is that we acknowledge that programmers are game designers too. You have to be. When you're where the rubber meets the road in terms of what the player will eventually experience. So if you think about an interaction naively, you don't fully think through what are all the possible ways that the player could interact with this scene. Like, could they wander off in the middle of it? Could they, they suddenly got the rope over here and we expect them to take this climb, but they could now hike all the way across the game and do that climb. If the programmer has to think like a designer at all times, and that should be acknowledged. They like if a game is just creatives who are thinking about the game creatively, it's going to probably be a bad game. So like you have to constantly think like a player and try to make it as good as possible. You will think of things that the people who are just doing design will not think of when you're actually doing the implementation.
I think another set of people who are very underappreciated testers. I saw a tweet recently, and I can't name them because I've forgotten, but it's probably for the best. Don't. That said something like, "I'm really sick of all these games coming out and us users having to act as beta testers."
Yeah.
I don't know about that, because I kind of think that you're fucking really undervaluing the amount of work testers do. Because I know a couple, and you trust me. It's frustrating to have to download a patch or have a bug in a game, but seriously, like, testers are doing their job to the best of their ability. Like, they really are, without naming any names. But yeah, I agree. It's you need a very particular type of brain to be a good tester.
I suppose, like, again, it's very much, we kind of live in this age as I suppose as games kind of get bigger and studios kind of get more well known in the, I suppose, just amongst fans, and personalities, I suppose, get more well known. Like, people do gravitate towards designers and directors and whatnot, when people kind of forget that, like, for instance, and I'm not, to use a modern day term, throwing shade on Jonathan Blow, but he's very much like, the people see The Witness as, this is Jonathan Blow's game, and it's like, I mean, it's, of course he's part of it, but there is X number of people in that team as well. How many people are employees of Campo Santo?
So it's a little bit of a fuzzy number. I would say there's been 15 people to have ever worked on Firewatch, somewhere around there. Yeah. But then it's not everybody in that group is full time.
Right. I assumed you were going to say like 50.
Oh gosh, no. Yeah. We've made it on an incredibly shoestring budget considering the scope of the game, and everybody has had to wear many, many hats. Like Gabe McGill, who's like our, like, the closest thing we have to a producer, also is a QA tester, and as well as like an office manager. And, Jane, who's a 3D artist, also does production work. So we all do wear many hats. And we're only about 10 people working on it currently, including Ollie and the folks in the UK. James Benson, the animator.
So Ollie does work for Campo Santo. He's not like... well, not freelance, that's not the word I'm looking for, but he is actually an employee of Campo Santo, for example.
He's not actually an employee.
Okay. But he's working on the game, so...
Exactly. I think he's like... Yeah, I think he's working on his own terms, but I think he's mostly working because he wants to make this game, Ollie's the sort of person who could be working on anything for anyone, I think he did the covers for the new Harry Potter editions.
Yeah, I saw those,
yeah.
That's crazy.
It really is.
I actually thought, I didn't realize they were like real things. I thought that they were just like, he'd done them as a mock-up for something fun to do. I didn't realize they were actually Christ.
Pretty nuts.
J.K. Rowling actually rang Ollie Moss and said, because I believe that's how the book industry works. J.K. just got on the phone, just rang up Ollie, said, would you mind making me a couple of covers?
It's the same with Mr. Sony obviously rang up Campo Santo and just said, hi, I'm Mr. Sony. That's right. Your game on our system, please. That is a thing that's happening. I mean, how I don't know. I mean, again, if you can answer this, or even if you would personally be involved in that sort of thing, but not how does it come about? Because it's obvious, pretty obvious how it comes about. But how are they helpful to getting your game to their platform? Because there was that thing with John Blow recently where I think he. Was it rumoured or he actually said we didn't realise we had to get it into submission by date X and therefore that's why there's no pre-order, the game can't be pre-ordered. Do you know what I mean? Like, then
I didn't hear about that, but that sounds believable.
I think he said it. I'd have to check, but I think that was basically what he said. He didn't get it into, I'm doing it now as well, saying it's his game. The development team, the company, didn't get the game into submission in time. And of course, if it's not into submission in time, it can't be there, populated in the store to pre-order. Lots of processes can't happen. But the thing I was surprised about is that given how hard Sony went after indies, I was kind of surprised there wasn't some. Maybe there was. Again, don't know. But I was surprised that there wasn't someone at Sony ringing the company saying, "Hey, listen, guys, you need to get this in because you want to be able to have people pre-order your game on our service, right? Because that's you have to submit a game to us, sort of thing. The build, whatever." I just assumed, maybe wrongly, that they would be. I don't know if helpful is a fair word, but I mean,
communication. I suppose.
Yeah, I suppose.
Right.
And how's it been with you guys?
Sony's been super helpful to us. We have contacts there who are very responsive, and I think that I would say it's been a really pleasurable experience working with them. That said, there is. The process is incredibly bureaucratic, and that's not all Sony's fault. Although there is a ton of paperwork you have to get exactly right to get into cert, and metadata you can get slightly incorrect on. But then on top of all that, and then on top of all that, because they need to be, there's a bunch of different standards boards around the world. So Europe requires totally different paperwork to sell in than. Like PEGI versus ESRB, totally different processes, different paperwork. And so there's just a lot of things we didn't really know we needed to do until we were actually facing it down and being like, oh crap, the game's coming out in 2 weeks, So I can sympathize with Jonathan Blow for that amount.
Well, it happened to Fulbright as well, didn't it, with Gone Home? They got the game out on console in North America, but it's actually not, at the time of recording, it's not out in Europe yet, or Australia, because there was something to do with ratings, I think they said.
That sounds right. I mean, I'm so happy to say that I don't have to worry about it, like other folks worry on here, but it was actually overheard in the office recently where someone was like, the real question is how any game comes out in Europe.
Yeah. Well, we're sorry on behalf of... all of Europe.
I'm sorry on behalf of European gamers. Something to think about.
Is this your subtle way of saying it's been delayed in Europe or something? Please don't do that.
Thankfully not. But
we've always got PC. We've always got PC. That's fine.
That's right.
Jesus, you must be up the walls though. In fairness, because like the game, did I see a tweet today? Was it from you guys that was like 12 days?
12 days. That's right.
Jesus. So
So when for a downloadable game, obviously it's a different process to kind of a disc-based game. But when do you down tools on a game? That's...
It's going to say never.
Oh, I see. Yeah. For PS4, we had to put down our tools much earlier. That's probably been the last change that went into PS4 that wasn't like a cert-breaking bug was at least 3 weeks ago, I would say.
Right.
And then, with Steam, we could still be pushing changes to it now. It's one of those things where you really want to be very, very careful and judicious about what patches you put in, because there's always the risk that, in fixing a small bug, you introduce a problem that's a huge bug, and you can't afford to keep QAing the entire game in order to find those right up until the end. So we're more or less pencils down now, although there are still, there's still a few fixes trickling in right towards the end, which will definitely be in on Steam, and then I think we would kind of bundle up a big patch release for PS4 after the fact.
But that's kind of interesting because people often complain like, oh, bloody lazy developers, day one patch and that. But the point is, if you want the game to come out by the day you said you want, like the 9th, we haven't actually said that. The game's out on February 9th. If you want the game to come out to all the people who are desperately wanting to play it, as you said, there comes a point where you must submit a build that is the final build to Sony.
Absolutely. Yep.
And therefore, any work done after that has to be a patch. There's no way it can't be a patch because the game is final. It's the equivalent of going gold, isn't it? I mean, it is going gold, essentially.
It is, 100%.
That's the process. So, well, I'm sure everyone's frustrated that there's a day one patch or whatever because you'd love to. I'm sure every developer would love to be the one developer who puts a game out and there's no patch because we're just perfect. We're just the best. You know what I mean?
Right.
No problems here. 3 weeks, no worries, finished. But that the kind of isn't the way the real world works, is it?
Absolutely. And especially with the way, I don't think people fully appreciate how complicated video games are.
I mean, you don't just press a button that says make game now.
Yeah. Save as PlayStation 4 version. That's it, isn't it?
Yeah, right, exactly. That's the way, I mean, it should be. But, it's like if you think of the number of moving parts in a car and then multiply that by about 1,000, you can start, there's just so many moving pieces. And so, just guaranteeing the quality and the bug rate in something that complicated is just a massive undertaking. And so, of course, Sony wants to freeze things at one point and say, this is your shipping game. It's a bottleneck that they've forced us through, but I think it probably results in a better game where that build gets QA'd more than any other build we've ever done. It, both by professionals and at Sony and people we've hired to sort of give us the Sony run through before we even go to Sony. And then that forces you to really judiciously judge every fix that goes afterwards in the patch release and just really focus on it as tiny changes. And then, and I think as a result, those patch changes are usually small but critical. They really, really are going to fix major problems. In the game, and that's but I guess I can see why it looks to the outsider as like, whoa, you're really coming in hot.
I hate Campo Santo. Why didn't they press file save as Xbox?
It's
just, it's like it happened with Bloodborne. Why won't this come to PC and play and Xbox? And it's like I don't know where to start. I really don't know where to start.
they kind of like the whole day one patch kind of anger and whatnot, Patrick. Like, to kind of play devil's advocate, I suppose, like as someone who plays games, is there a part of you who kind of looks at the reaction of certain people and kind of says, yeah, I understand, because when I turn on my PlayStation and I want to play whatever game X, Bloodborne, Adam, because you just said it there, and there's an update or something, and you go, oh really? I just wanted to play it now. Like, is there a part of you that does kind of understand that mentality of
absolutely, and I completely feel that mentality. I hate waiting. I always think the thing that makes me the saddest are the little kids on Christmas Day who get a PlayStation and they get Bloodborne, and then they're like, "Oh, let's do this," and then it's like 4 hours of incremental updates.
Just to point out, their kids shouldn't be playing Bloodborne. Sorry, Patrick. just to point that out.
That's a really good point. There's nothing for them there. But yeah, and then the other thing with I wish Sony let you do that Steam does is, with Steam, if we fix a typo in a line of dialogue, that's going to be a 20 kilobyte change that we can actually push down. On PlayStation. That's going to be a 5 gig change because they don't let you incrementally update your software. You kind of have to just push a entirely new bundle.
One question, again, you might not be able to answer this, but the one thing I've always been intrigued about is with Sony's, the way they handle the stores. I don't know if they'd even let you in on this, but say you do, say your game is, and I'm just plucking a number out of the sky, it's 10 gigabytes, 10.1 gigabytes, right? And you download that, and that's the game. And then there's a patch, and that game is, you've downloaded a 2.4 gigabyte patch. The game is now 12.5 gigabytes, unless I've completely fucked up the maths. But that's your game. But if I hadn't bought the game, 6 months later, I'll go to download the game, and it's 10.1 gigabytes, and there's a 2.5 gigabyte patch. Is there any particular reason that the game doesn't then get rebundled? Or at some point maybe even recertified as like the game is now complete. You don't have to download anything else. This is just the game. Do you know what I mean? Does that?
I don't know the reason why. I also ask myself why it seems important to keep applying patches rather than just having a new finished build.
Yeah.
I don't know. I luckily, the part of the game that I've worked on is pretty far away from the ultimate build step. I'm happy to say.
You're having a great time, it sounds like.
I mean, yeah, I'm happy to say that people with way more industry experience than I am are working on that side and doing a really great job. And that's why we're actually going to be able to come out on Europe on the same day.
So there you go. If you heard it here first, it's undelayed. It's now still coming on.
Yeah.
The patch thing fascinates me because I'm old enough that I remember playing Spectrum games that if they were broken, they were just fucked. That's it. You bought a game and it's not getting patched because it's on a cassette tape and the internet doesn't exist. So that's it. That game breaking bug. Sorry.
Yep.
What do you mean? You're not going to patch it? What do you mean patch it? Sorry, the game's broken. It just and in a way, like, people won't want to hear this, but like the fact that games get fixed. All right, maybe, yeah, of course, they shouldn't be released broken in the first place, but at the same time, they do get fixed.
Yeah.
And that is something to be thankful for, a reason to be cheerful. But I don't know, we've kept you for long enough. I think you've probably got to go and do some other things now, haven't you? Like work on the game.
Make the game.
I'm going to go press the Xbox button, yeah.
Please, yeah. Jesus Christ.
Don't say that, Patrick. Yeah. It's on the front page of Reddit already.
Thank you so much, Tom. I really appreciate it. Yeah, we can't. I know I can't wait for Firewatch. I'm really looking forward to playing it. And Colm, I'm sure you are too, because I know it's right up your street.
I'm very much so. Yeah, as I just to reiterate earlier, like I loved Gone Home, just taking something kind of well, to be honest, I don't know much about Firewatch, but that's what I
just listened to an hour-long discussion.
Well, in terms of the story and whatnot. Okay. But I do enjoy Wander games for the most part, so I'm very much looking forward to Firewatch, because even Adam, I've learned something new here. We've kind of dialogue options and like branching paths and stuff, so yeah, I'm very much looking forward to it.
Great.
Is there anything you want to pimp? Any like your own Twitter handle or anything, or are you on Twitter?
I'm at Hoverbird. Okay. Say hey if you heard the show. Feel free to ask me any questions there or in our Steam forums.
Apart from how long the game is.
Yeah.
Or well, why isn't it coming to Xbox?
And yeah, I mean, I would just pimp again, like that we're coming out February 9th in Europe and the US, and PS4, Steam, Mac, PC, Linux. Yeah, I really hope you'll play it, and if you love the exploration of a Wander game, but really want characters who feel real and like you actually like getting to know them and interacting with them, I think you're really gonna love this game.
Well, I was gonna say it's +1 sale, but I'll review it, so I won't have to buy it. Sorry, I'll tell you, I'll donate. I'll buy it separately on my kids' account. Can my kids play this game?
I would say no. I don't know how old your kids are, but it's M-rated here. There's definitely a lot of cursing and adult themes, shall we say?
Adult themes. Okay, no, I get you. I get exactly what you're talking about.
Oh, and it's also hilarious because there's like a single whiskey bottle in the game, and so now in all our ratings it says like drugs and alcohol.
Oh my God.
Because there's a bottle in it.
Right, wow. Right. But now we're in an opiate den.
Is it full?
It's about half full, so somebody drank that.
Someone drank it.
Yeah, exactly.
Jesus. Well, I mean, if we've learned nothing else, we've learned that the single half-empty bottle of whiskey means your game is Alcoholics Anonymous.
Yeah, that's pretty much.
Thank you once again, Patrick, for your time. Really do appreciate it. So we know you're busy. Yeah, and for those of you who aren't sticking around for the Patreon extra bit, go to patreon.com/GodIsAGeek, and anything over $5, which is about £3 English money, that will get you the extended podcast every week, and it's well worth it, because at the moment it seems to always be stories about school
and cartoons and stuff. Yeah, it was cartoons last week. Dan Murphy was gold. It was perfect.
He always is. So thank you very much. That's goodbye from myself, goodbye from Colm,
goodbye,
and goodbye from Patrick.